Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay.
Kavod Harav, I think we were in the middle of Yosef, no?
Yes. So we go on here. It says like this. Right? We said yesterday that if the egg was laid on one day of Yom Tov, it's allowed on the next day of Yom Tov. So what's the reason for that? The Chad Minayhu Cholhu, because one of them is like a weekday, right? So either way, it's allowed, right? Whether it's the first day or the second day is a weekday, it's allowed either way. When it comes to 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, right? It's forbidden on both of the days. So explains Rashi, the reason is because Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are considered like one long day. Midrabanan, from the rabbis, of course, right? This is not from the Torah. So he says that in the beginning, right, when they started to, look what he says. There's something interesting, right? So he says in the beginning, when they decreed the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the rabbis, it wasn't because of doubt. That's not the reason why they did it. So therefore, it doesn't really apply here, that principle. Interesting point. Okay, so Ve'im ba'u edim min ha-mincha u'mala. So he says, right, that okay, maybe we have to read this in a tour, but okay, he's quoting in here. So he says like this, right? That if the witnesses came, min ha-mincha u'mala. So what does that mean? Now we're talking about the issue of Kviyut Chodesh, right? That in the old days, right, when there was a Bet Din, what they used to do is they would fix the Rosh Chodesh according to the Bet Din, according to the witnesses that came to testify. So he tells you, right, what was the procedure here, right, that we're talking about? That if the witnesses came in the afternoon, right, afa pisha en monin lemoadot me'ayom lo mezalzelin al behai shloshim ela gomrin oto bisura. So he says, even though, right, if the witnesses came, they came late. But nevertheless, he says, right, we don't just, disqualify the first day as it's not like Yom Tov, and we keep it anyway. even though the witnesses came late. So he says, right, you see from there that it wasn't because of doubt, that wasn't the issue. That's not the reason why they made this decree. Because we know, right, for sure that the next day is going to be Yom Tov if the witnesses didn't come on the first day on time. This is nevertheless, right, tiknu la'asoto, anyway, they decreed to keep it, as a Yom Tov. Shma mina chok hachachamim hu umitzvatam hayta. So it says, you see from there that this was the rabbis made this decree. La'asotan bebau edim achar mincha. When did they make this decree? Right, because the witnesses were coming after in the afternoon. Right, it's a little bit late. Urechokim yesh lahem la'asotan bechol shana. And it says because of that, the people who are distant from the Beit Din, they have to do every year. Yavo edim achar mincha. Just in case that the witnesses will come after in the afternoon. So the way the rabbis made it was that it's one right time of holiness, right? The whole 2 days, 1 day of holiness. So you cannot say here, he says, right, that one of them is like a weekday, like when it comes to the other week, the Yom Tov. It's not like that. Because it could be, right, that they're both holy, right? There's no mundane here. Interesting. Okay. So then he goes on. כתב רם פרק א', it says the Rambam, דבר שהיה מוקצה ביום טוב ראשון, או שנודע בראשון, אם הכין אותו לשני, על זה מותר. So he says something which was muktzah on the first day of Yom Tov, and then, right, what he did was he did hachana, right? What does that mean? He designated it to use it the day after. So then he says it's allowed to do so, to use it the day after, even though it's Yom Tov, right, the next day. Okay. So it seems from his words, he says that egg which was laid on the first day, it's not allowed on the second day, unless you designate it on the first day. So he says, I don't know where he got this from, this concept. Okay. So he says it could be, he's not referring here to this case, with the egg, which is nolad. That's something else, right? We're talking about just, regular muktzah, your garden variety muktzah. That we can say, that concept. But here, perhaps not, right? It's not really relevant here. Okay. So anyway, it goes on. Katav says the Ran, Shabbat v'Yom Tov hasmuchim, right? What about now if you have, right, 2 days, right? One day Shabbat, 1 day is Yom Tov. The hu adin leYom Tov v'Shabbat, same thing, right? Doesn't matter which order you have it, same thing. V'lo shana Shabbat v'Yom Tov rishon, v'lo shana Shabbat v'Yom Tov sheni, kegon shechal Yom Tov rishon b'Shabbat. And it doesn't matter, he says, whether it's the second day of Yom Tov, first day, it's all the same. Katav od b'chomer Shabbat hu b'Yom Tov tefeh mishnei yamim tovim shel galuyot. So he says, having Shabbat and Yom Tov is more stringent than having 2 days of Yom Tov in a row in the diaspora. Haynu mishum deshenei yamim tovim shel galuyot tarbayu safek ninum. So he says, why is that? Because the 2 days of Yom Tov, are doubt. So therefore, on each one, you can say Shema Hai Cholu, that perhaps this is right a weekday. Aval Shabbat Yom Tov Shabbat, but when it comes to Yom Tov and Shabbat together, Shabbat Vadai Kadoshu, for sure, right? Shabbat is not a weekday, right? So it's not the same thing. The Yom Tov Hasamuch La Nami Shemek Tov Yom Tov Gamuhu. It could be also that the Yom Tov that comes next to the Shabbat is also a Yom Tov, right? Could be. as we said, it's a doubt. So either way, right? It's going to be more stringent that way. Okay. כתבו הגאות מימון בפרק א' ביצה. So says the הגאות מימון. Right? What is he saying here? ביצה שנולדה בראשון תאכל בשני, right? If the egg was laid on the first day of Yom Tov, it can be eaten on the second day of Yom Tov. וכן פסקו כל הרבותיי. So he says, all my rabbis paskin like that. Okay. You look at Ravan, right? Not like the Ravan, שכתב שהנהיגו גאונים. So he says like this, right? That the Geonim established a rule, right? Rishonim in the earlier authorities. The kulhu lechamir, right? To be stringent in all these cases.
That's like my favorite.
Lechamir gezerah yom tov shel galuyot atu shnei yamin tovim. Why is that? Because they may come to confuse, right? 2 days of diaspora with the 2 days of Shel Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, he says, right, they're stringent about this. So the Ran is telling you, right, Hagot Maimon, I'm sorry, it's telling you that everybody besides this rabbi is lenient. You know, this rabbi is stringent. Okay. Interesting.
Kabbalah, can you repeat one more time who was lenient, which rabbi was lenient, and which rabbi was
So
stringent?
this rabbi says, right, Hagot Maimon,
Thank you.
that his rabbis were lenient except this one, right, the Ravan, who was stringent. Okay, so then he goes on. Katav Rabbeinu Yerucham, says Rabbeinu Yerucham. Im nolda b'Shabbat asura b'Yom Tov, right? If the egg was laid on Shabbat, it's forbidden on Yom Tov, Shulchan, which comes afterwards. Kigon imaya Yom Tov Rishon. If it was, he says that means it was the first day of Yom Tov. Perush v'chen b'Yom Sheni. Imhu Yom Tov. This also could be the second day, which is if it's Yom Tov. Kivan shenolda b'Shabbat, since it was laid on Shabbat, the egg. The end Yom Tov mechin leShabbat. Why? Because Yom Tov does not prepare for Shabbat, right? So what does that mean? That you cannot prepare one day to the other, make preparations. Okay, below Shabbat mechin Yom Tov. Also the other way around doesn't work. Ad kan, right? But so says Bet Yosef, right? He says, I'm wondering, how did he katav v'chen b'yom sheni? How did he write also on the second day? Imu Yom Tov, if it's Yom Tov, dechevan de im nolda rishon. So he says, since that if it was laid on the first day, muteret b'sheni would be forbidden on the second day. Kishen nolda b'Shabbat, if it was laid on Shabbat, lama teaser b'yom sheni. Why would it be forbidden on the second day? V'alo ben she'aya yeh yom rishon kodem kodesh. Isn't it true? He says that whether the first day is holy or she'aya chola, or it's going to be mundane, it's going to be weekday. L'macharato shehu yom sheni mutar. Either way, right? The next day should be allowed. Ve'efshar de b'yom tov shel Rosh Hashanah kamar. So it's possible he's talking about Rosh Hashanah. V'shemer lo yom sheni shel shavua kamar. And he says maybe he's not talking about the second day of the week. Ela yom sheni shel yom tov. It's talking about the second day of Yom Tov. Shechal liot be'echad b'Shabbat. It turned out on Sunday. Came out on Sunday. Aval pi shelefi zeh en ta'am lama shkatav im hu Yom Tov. Says even though according to this there is no reasoning regarding what he wrote that it's Yom Tov. Okay, so that's the end of the Bet Yosef here. Good, that's the Shulchan Aruch. That was a long one. Okay, that was Hey. So we'll do Shulchan Aruch Hey. So it says here like this. Im norda b'yom tov rishon, right? If the egg was laid on the first day of Yom Tov, muteret Yom Tov sheni. It's allowed on the second day of Yom Tov, right? Shel galuyot, right? What are we talking about? If it's the diaspora, in the diaspora. About b'shnei Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah. But if it's if you're talking about 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, וכן בשבת ביום טוב, and also if it's Shabbat and Yom Tov, right, the one after the other. הסמוכים זה לזה, נולדה בזה, אסורה בזה. So then it's going to be forbidden on the second day. So here's the Ramah says here, ואם יום טוב ביום אחד, if Yom Tov is on the first day, bet ben אחד bet, ונולדה בשבת שלפניהם, right? So, okay, now he brings you a case like this. What about if Yom Tov comes out on Sunday and Monday, and Shabbat was actually, obviously before that, right? So we're talking about 3 days, right, in a row. Shabbat, and then 2 days of Yom Tov. So what's the rule with that? Right? So he says, right, it will be allowed on the second day of the Yom Tov, because, as we said, right, that, it's a doubt. So therefore, either way, right, it's allowed. That's pretty clear. Okay, so let's go on. I guess if you have any questions, let me know. We'll go to Vav. Okay, this is an interesting case, right? A little bit unusual, but we'll read it anyway. Right, so it says it like this. Right? Let's say the egg was laid. Okay, so now what happened? Most of it was laid on the day before Yom Tov. And then it went back in, came out again on Yom Tov, right? So the question is it forbidden or not? A little bit unusual, but I guess it happens once in a while. I wouldn't know, believe me when I tell you. Okay. This does happen, with birth also, right? That sometimes the fetus comes out and then goes back in and then comes out again. Things like this happen. Okay, so right. Anyway, he says right that right. So he says that it's allowed. Why? Because since the majority came out before Yom Tov, right, it's considered to be like it already came out. So he says, therefore, even if he checked, right, in the chicken coop, and he didn't find the egg yet before Yom Tov, right? He didn't find any eggs there. And then in the morning goes out, right, early in the morning, finds over there eggs. Look what he says. Wow. So he says they're allowed. Why is that? So he says because chickens don't lay eggs at night. Oh, there you go. So he says, therefore, it must have came before the night, which was before Yom Tov. Okay. אף על פי שבדק אתמול ולא מצא בה, right? So even though he checked the day before and he didn't find it, אנו תולין שמאתמול יצא, but we assume that it came the day before. Ruba, what does that mean? Most of it came out, right? וחזר, and they went back in. כגון דאיכא זכר בהדר, right? How would that happen? So, for instance, if there was a rooster there, right, in the next to the chicken, next to the hen, and ואפילו ad samech, but even right until 60 houses, vivad shelo yafsik nahar, as long as there's no river that stops there, interposes, shen bo gesher, which doesn't have a bridge, shaz ena yoledet belayla. So it's because otherwise it will not lay the eggs at night. But if there is no male there, right, rooster, lo, not so, right? Shaz yoledet belayla. So then it will lay the eggs on the night. So it depends on the presence of the rooster, right? That's what the man said. Okay, well, there you go. Interesting. ואם לא בדק בערב יום טוב, אפילו אלה כזכר בהדה. It says, if he didn't check on before Yom Tov, even though there's no male there in the area, a rooster, shari, it's allowed. The talina de me'etzmol hayta, because we assume that it came from the day before. Hayta sham. Okay, it was there before. דאף ולא זכר רובן יולדות ביום. So it's because even if there's no rooster, most of the time, right, they do lay the eggs in the daytime, right? Most of the time, the majority. Okay. הילקח מותר לקח ביצים מן עבודת גוי בליל ראשון, right? So therefore he says, that's why you're allowed to take eggs from the goy on the first night of Yom Tov. Talinan, because we assume Merav Yom Tov Yalda, that it came before Yom Tov, right? Because most, as we said, right, most of them are laid before Yom Tov. וכן בלילה בית בשני ימים טובים של גלויות. There's also the second night, right, on the 2 days of Yom Tov in the diaspora, אבל לא בליל בית של ראש השנה, but as we said, right, it doesn't apply to Rosh Hashanah, right, ולא בליל א' של יום טוב שאחר שבת, and also Shabbat Yom Tov doesn't work, one after the other. The emor me'atmol hava, because we say, right, that it probably came the day before. Okay, so right, there you go, right, we have lots of lots of chicken and egg stories over here. Okay, beautiful. So let's see the Bet Yosef here. I was thinking to skip this one, but okay, we already started. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, so as we said, so Bet Yosef here brings the source for this. Memra de Rabbi Yochanan peirat kama de Betzah, right? Where is this? The first parak of Betzah, Zayin Amud Aleph. Hilkach afilu badak bekina shel tanagolim me'erav Yom Tov. So as we said, right, even if he checked before and they found anything there, it could be that it came anyway, right? Because it went back in, as we said, right? Memra de Rav Mari Sham. So he says this is the saying of Rav Mari there in the Gemara. Okay, so that's the story there. And then it goes on. And now what you said, right? We're talking about when there's a rooster there present in the vicinity. So he says, right, this is all, everything is written in the Gemara about this. Okay, good. So we have sources, right, for everything, right? No funky business over here. ומה שנתן טעם משום דאב בלא זכר רובן ילודות ביום. And now what she said, the Tur, that nevertheless, right, regardless of if there is a rooster there, most of them are late anyway in the daytime, the majority. כך פירשו רש"י התוספות, that's what it says Rashi and Tosfot, והר"ן, also the Ran. Hilkach mutar likach betzim min hagoy, right? Then we said that's why you're allowed to buy the eggs from the goy that were laid on, right, on Yom Tov. You can take it, you can buy. Talina al merev Yom Tov yalda, because we assume came before Yom Tov, right? It all says the same thing as we said, the second night of Yom Tov of the diaspora. Okay, let me ask you a question now, right? Since we got to a little sticky point over here. How do you buy something on Yom Tov? Anybody know how you do that? Or what about Shabbat? Can you buy something on Shabbat?
Can't buy on Shabbat, but on Yom can't buy on Shabbat, right? At all. But on Yom Tov you pay ahead, yeah?
Okay, so the truth is, right, that one time, there was a certain rabbi in the area here who calls me up, whatever, texts me, whatever, and he says, Rabbi, he says, are you allowed to send a goy? Listen to this, right? No, he asked me, are you allowed to send a goy to buy something for you on Shabbat? Right? So, he was talking about let's say you forgot to buy challah, right? So you send a goy, to buy some chalot for you. So I told him, I said, well, it's a nice question you're asking, but why don't you just go by yourself and buy it yourself? Why? Why do you send the goy?
On Shabbat?
Right. Yeah, so that's exactly what he said, just like you, So I told him, yeah, on Shabbat. So he asked me, he says, where is that written? So I said, it's in the Shulchan Aruch, take a look over there. So
you can't use money though.
Right. So what does it say in the Shulchan Aruch? You're right, of course. What does it say in the Shulchan Aruch, right? You go in the store, okay? Right? Obviously, the store belongs to a goy, right? Otherwise, it shouldn't be open on Shabbat. So you go to a goyish store, right? You waltz in there, and you tell the guy, yeah, you know what? I need some, I'm taking some chalot, give me 2 to go, right? Yeah. So you tell him like this, right? It's Shabbat, right? I can't pay you now, right? The thing, right? The guy knows him, right? Whatever, he knows about Jews, right? He lives in Rego Park, right? This is not right, some goyish place, right? So in Rego Park, they know, there's Jews like this, forgot to buy chalot on Shabbat. So you go, right? You go. And you take it, and then you become Sunday, right? You pay him, that's what you do, right? So 2 things you cannot do, right? One thing is you cannot talk about a price, right? And the second thing is, you can't pay him, obviously, right? So, but we all know what the price is, right? The challah costs $5, right? So that's it, right? You'll pay him tomorrow. So if the guy trusts you, he knows you already. He knows you're, one of those fanatic Jews, right? So he's okay with that. So same thing on Yom Tov, right? You want to buy something on Yom Tov, same thing, right? Just go to the store, or whatever, Tell the guy, give me, yalla, let's go, right? Give me a watermelon, right? Yeah. Okay.
Could you prepay though? Could you I don't know, put money on account ahead of time?
Right, but the whole thing is, you're not really interested in prepaying because the whole thing is you forgot, right? That's the whole thing. So,
well, just in case of forgetting. Because I don't know a lot of
right, but people don't do that. They forget. How it is, right?
I don't know a lot of.
I forgot this. I forgot that. Right?
Come back. Do you know many places that would let you buy on credit?
So here's the thing, right? That a lot of goyim, especially in America, they're very nice. They're very nice people. Once they know, that you're one of those fanatic Jews, ultra Orthodox, they'll let you do whatever you want. They like religion, they're into religion. They like those, religious people, So that's So that's they'll, they'll let you. They don't mind. Funny story, by the way. I want to tell you. One time, I go to 108th Street, right? You know where that is, right? You lived over here. I went to 108th Street. So I walk into one of the stores over there, which is owned by a goy, but he has a lot of kosher food there, because he has a lot of Jewish customers, obviously. So he tells me, he says, like the lady at the cash register. He says, there's one Jew over here. He says, he says he comes on Shabbat, he takes stuff, and then he says he doesn't come to pay for it on Sunday. So I said, well, I guess he's a thief, okay. Because if you don't pay, you got a problem, you know what I mean? The goy will give you, if he understands what you're doing, you know what I mean? He's got it, he gets it. But the thing is, don't make a chilul Hashem, and not pay, you got to pay him. You know what I mean? So whatever, right? That's the story there. So as long as you don't mention the price and you don't pay the money, you can buy things on Shabbat and Yom Tov, no problem. Sometimes you need it, what can you do, right? So that's the way it goes,
So here's an interesting question, so somewhat related. I had someone say to me, because sometimes on Saturdays, I go I walk around, just to get outside to walk around for a little bit, especially now that time. And my son, likes to go we go downtown because that's where his chess club is, and so I'll walk with him. And they have a farmer's market, so sometimes we'll just walk around the farmer's market. And this person said to me that I shouldn't do that because then it looks like I'm shopping. Is that true?
So the truth is, the rabbis didn't decree on this, so there's no decree of the rabbis. But as a piece of good advice, I wouldn't make a habit of it, if you know what I mean.
I know, I understand. Just once in a while,
You know what I mean?
Just have to have somewhere to go to walk around, just.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really such a good idea, to walk around, just for to walk around in the stores, on Shabbat, because
Not in the stores. It's just like walking around downtown, like the streets,
no, there's no prohibition to take a stroll on Shabbat, right? A lot of people like to do that.
I don't go into any stores. It's just they have a farmer's market down
Yeah,
there.
there's no prohibition. There's no prohibition to stroll around.
I guess the question was, is it Marasayan if I'm seen in an area where there's a farmer's market? Does it look like?
Well, it's only Marit Ayin if you don't know halakha.
I know the halakha, but I mean, doesn't mean that.
Okay.
Looking out their window at me.
Because the rabbis didn't decree on these things, you know what I mean? They didn't make such decrees like that.
Okay, thank you.
Only if the rabbis decreed Marit Ayin, there's Marit Ayin. Otherwise, there's no Marit Ayin. You can't say about everything Marit Ayin, like the whole thing is Marit Ayin. You look suspicious, sir, whatever, But as we said, right, obviously, to hang around going in the stores, on Shabbat, right, when there's no need, it does look suspicious, so not such a good idea, you know what I mean? You gotta use your noodle, But if you need to buy something really, like for Shabbat, then you're allowed to go in there. I'm not talking about that. That's a different story. Okay, right? You get the idea. I'm sure you understand. Okay, so yeah, let's continue here. So that's how you buy something on Shabbat and Yom Tov, right? If you forgot something, you forgot chalot, you forgot something, whatever. So you go and you take it. Right? You forgot to buy a bottle of wine, right? Whatever. So you go into your goyish liquor store, and if the guy trusts you, you're lucky. You got lucky, right? If the guy knows you, he'll trust you. Usually, it's like a neighborhood, mom and pop shop. You know what I mean?
But
You'll be all right with that.
Let's say the guy doesn't trust you. Can you send a Shabbat?
He doesn't trust you. Can't steal it. I mean, can't steal it from him.
Can you send a Shabbat? Send a non-Jew to do it for you?
Yeah. So the truth is, if you really need that item for Shabbat, right? Let's say, bottle of wine, some chalot, whatever, right? So you can send the goy to even pay him.
to pay. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Because it's only rabbinical, the prohibition, of paying money. It's not from the Torah. So, therefore, right, yes, if you send the goy can even pay, But obviously, right, you can't touch the money, right? He has to take it out of your wallet. Just make sure it doesn't take too much, right?
It just seems like you can probably find a non-Jew neighbor or somebody that you trust, that trust you more.
Yeah,
than
so if you got your Shabbos goy, you know what I mean? Some neighbor, some nice neighbor, whatever, right? You got your Shabbos goy there. So yeah, he can go buy something for you, no problem, right? There's not really an issue with that. As long as you need it though, obviously if you don't need it, they shouldn't do that. Yeah. It's not a shopping spree, right? Okay. So yeah. Hopefully we'll all remember, right, to buy everything. So this way we won't need these things, right? Whatever, right? Okay. So anyway, right, let's go on. כן כתבו הראש והמורדכי ירד והר"ן, פרק כמה לביצה, וכתבו, הרב מגיד בפרק ד', so all these rabbis wrote this, right, they wrote it up, בשם הרשב"א, name the Rashba, ותמה משום דרובן הם של זכרים, right, as we said, right, that, so he says the reason is because the majority, that, there's roosters there in the vicinity, right, they only lay eggs in the daytime, right? But nowadays, by the way, things are a little bit different, right? You know why? Because the way we raise chickens today, they're in coops, and there's no roosters in the coops. So, there for sure, right? There's no male there. If you're raising the chicken in a coop. So that's not the same thing exactly, right? A little bit different. So then, if that's the case, we rely on the concept of majority. That we have. Sometimes we can rely on that, right? Because the majority of the eggs are laid in the daytime. Okay, so good. אלא ביום, אפילו בספינה דספנה בירה, הרי אמרן דורובן אינו נולד אלא ביום. שום הכי כתב מונחי. Right, so he says, right, that even as we said, right, I just told you, he says, right, that even when there's no rooster, most of them are laid in the daytime. Right? So therefore the Mordechai says, right, that even if there's no rooster in the town, there isn't one rooster there, right? It's still allowed, he says, to rely on this, What does that mean? That we're presuming that egg was laid before Yom Tov, even though we don't really have evidence. As we said, right? Okay, good. So let's go on a little bit. But as we said, right, this doesn't work on Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is like one long day of holiness, right? That applies in many, many things in halakha. By the way, just to let you know, when we say Rosh Hashanah is one long day, it only applies the Chumrah, not the Kula, right? It only goes stringent, but lenient doesn't go. So if there's a leniency that comes out of that, don't take that leniency. That's not the purpose. Okay, so right. And now what he says, right, that you can, as we said, right, you can't do Rosh Hashanah. So it says in Ran, also this rabbi, so it's obvious, right, as we said, right? בקצת ספרי רבנו כתוב ולא בליל יום טוב שאחר השבת. He says there are some books which it says the Yom Tov which comes after Shabbat, וגם זה פשוט, so that's also clear, right? Very clear, as we said. זה היה בשני ימים טובים של ראש השנה, ויום טוב הסמוך לשבת נולדה בזה אסורה בזה, right? So as we said, because we already said, right, that when you have Shabbat and Yom Tov together, right, you cannot be lenient with this to say it's going to be allowed the next day. כתב רן, says the Ran, right, the Ika man deshare likach betzim min hagoyim afilu beyom rishon. So, right, says the Ran, that there is the one that allows to take eggs from from the goy, right? To buy from the goy, right? Eggs, as we said, right? Afilu b'yom rishon should go Rosh Hashanah. Even the first day of Rosh Hashanah, they allow that. And also, right, as we said, the 2 days of Yom Tov and the diaspora. The Ruban shel betzim la b'nei yomaninu. So it says, why that? Because they say, right, that the majority of eggs are not laid that day. In other words, they even though it came out that day, right, but it wasn't created that day. The Azina Batar Ruba, so we go according to the majority, says, Kol echad de ate man de mezaben de gabe. But all the while that the one who's selling, right, comes to him, but it says to go to their house, right? So in other words, he says, right, if the goy brings it to you, it's allowed, but don't go to his house. So why? He says because that's the place where they're made, the eggs. Because there may be somebody there who's selling eggs which are, laid on that day, like created on that day. Right? So he says, in there, right, in a place like that, where it didn't move yet from the place, it's considered like 50-50. So there's no concept of majority there. That's what he's saying, right? When you go to his place. It's a Talmudic concept, right? This thing. Okay. If you have any questions, I'll explain it to you. Whatever. Okay. So that Vasov Perek and Tzadin. It's also in this Perek. So it's in Ketubot Tetvav, and also right in Betzat Tetzayin Amud. Katav Kach B'Shem Tosfot. He wrote this in the name of Tosfot. Umiu Katav Shehu Chochech Eazlinan Bataruba. So he says, but he's not sure, about this. He's pondering the issue. Right? Do we go according to the majority? Which something which is going to be permitted the next day, right? As we said yesterday, we talked about this, right? That something which is going to be permitted tomorrow, it doesn't get nullified. So maybe here also, right? It doesn't. You can't be lenient here. Because we hold, right? Doesn't get nullified even 1,000, something like that. So it says it's possible that it's different there. Because over there, right, the prohibition was already established. Okay, interesting. Nice piece of Torah there. Okay, so anyway, right, let's go on. It says Rav Magid Katav Perek Daled B'Shem Rashba. He writes in the 4th Perek, right, name of the Rashba. Kivan de Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin Hu. So it says since it's something which is going to be permitted in the future, Asur, it's forbidden. Since that also seems from the Rabbeinu, right, which is the Rambam. Besiman Tafkuf Yud Zayin, right, over there in this chapter. Katav Mordechai Besh Betza, also Mordechai. This is language. So it says we shouldn't allow eggs, right, from Goyim b'Yom Tov to buy them on Yom Tov, right? Mitam de'azinan bataruva, because we go according to the majority. That's not good enough. The noladim call them Yom Tov, that they were hatched before Yom Tov. Remember the betzim havu, right? Kemo davar mitkaved. So it says there is to say, right, that maybe the eggs are considered to be like something, which is there's a concept like this in kashrut, something which is mitkabed. What does that mean? It's like it has importance, right? Because it's a whole body. Right? The miyad shenoldu betzim miyad ochlin otan. So it says because it gets they eat it right away when it gets hatched. Right? So therefore you don't really have majority. By the way, it doesn't apply what we're saying here, right, in our stores, because those eggs are sitting there on the shelf for several days, right? So we're not worried about that in your local supermarket, right? We're not talking about that, obviously. Right? So that wouldn't really be a problem, to buy eggs that were in a goyish supermarket, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about you going to the house of the goy, right, who has his little right chicken operation going on in the backyard there, something like that, right? Something like that. Okay, so obviously, so אם כן לקרוא כנמוך הרבה כמה דפסחים בדבר שמתכבד גם במאות נמצאים בהר הבית, ולא אזינן בתרובה, משום דאמינן דראשונים דמתבטלו, right? So, yeah, so, right, he's telling you, right, that you shouldn't be lenient regarding this issue. But, so what does that mean? What are we talking about here, right? Don't buy eggs on the first day of Yom Tov from a goy, right? As we said, we're talking about your mom and pop operation, right? We're not talking about a supermarket, obviously, right? Those eggs are sitting there for quite a while. There's no issue with that. Okay, so we have a little bit more to go here. I guess we can finish it if you have the patience for me. So Katab said, right, so furthermore there, look what he says, right? What about if the goy happens to be like talking about this, as you came there, and he just happens to be like talking about this. He's not telling you. He's just talking, with somebody, right? And telling him like this, right? Yeah, these eggs were hatched yesterday. They were not hatched, but they were laid yesterday, right? And so he says it's allowed. If that's the case. So he says, why? Because the goy doesn't really want to tell you, right, that those eggs came yesterday, because the ones that are fresh are better. שנולדו מחדש, מאותם שנולדו מערב יום טוב, והוא שאין הגוי בקיא בטיב ישראל. But he says that's only if the goy doesn't know about those, Jews, right, ultra-Orthodox, that are, particular about these things, right? He doesn't know all that tricky stuff, right? אבל אם ידע הגוי שנולד אסור, right? But he says if the goy knows that it will be forbidden to the Jew to buy it if it was late today, right? Which goy knows that today, right? No goy knows that today. But in the old days, things were a little bit different. אסור ביום טוב, it's going to be forbidden on יום טוב. לא סומכים על הלד, מתכוון להשביח מכחו. Because now he wants to write, he wants to make his merchandise more, right, more desirable, right, by saying that they were laid yesterday for the Jews, those ultra-Orthodox Jews, right? להשביח מכחו, להתירו בכתוב, בתרומת הדשן, so it says in תרומת הדשן, דהרי ביום טוב דעלמא. So he says, we're talking about Yom Tov, she'eno le'achar Shabbat, which is not after Shabbat. The bedideh betzad shenolda ena asura ela midrabanan. So he says, because regarding Yom Tov, right, it's only the prohibition is only rabbinical. But Yom Tov she'achar Shabbat, but he says if it's Yom Tov after Shabbat, she'asur midoraita, that's going to be forbidden from the Torah. Oh, mishum hachana, because of preparation. Lo samchinan aleh. So then we don't rely on the goy, right? Omnam, Yom Tov b'Shabbat, but it says if it would seem that if Yom Tov falls on Shabbat, Yom Rishon, and also right on Sunday, 2 days, right? Tehashta abe Yom Tov sheni, Yom Tov shelachar Shabbat. So then the second day of Yom Tov is on Sunday. Samchin on a goy, then we can rely on the goy, right? Masiach lepitumo. We're just talking, casually talking. Right? So what does that mean casually? That means you didn't ask him, right? He's just talking about it, with somebody, right? Having a conversation. So he says that they know, right, that this is only rabbinical, this whole thing about Rosh Chodesh, right? Not Rosh Chodesh, I'm sorry, the Yom Tov. He says all the more so if it's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. That we hold that if it was late on one day, it's forbidden on the day. But if the goy is just talking about it casually, we can rely on that. It says, so that's not preparation from the Torah. Okay, interesting ideas here going on here, right? Interesting. Even though Rosh wrote בתשובה, then goy masiach לפי neman. So the Rosh said, but that a goy who's having a casual conversation is not believed. So now he's right asking if that's the case, how do we believe him over here? Right? Neman ela be'edut isha bilbad. He's only believed regarding testifying for a woman, for a woman. What does that mean, testifying for a woman? That he says, right, that the husband died, so she can remarry. There we believe him. Otherwise, we don't. That's what the Rosh says. That's what it says in Rashba Ribash, right? So several rabbis are talking about this. So therefore, since it's something which is rabbinical, if you want to rely on the Mordechai, he says it's okay, you're good. you're fine. So there you go, right? So a nice leniency over here, right? From the Mordechai, that you have this guy talking about it, casually with his friend, right? Or he's talking on the phone, right? Whatever, right? God knows. Okay, so let's do Shulchan Aruch and we're done, right? I kept you long tonight, but that's okay. It's all right. We have to make up some time anyway. Okay, we're making up for lost time. All right, good. So let's go. So says the Shulchan Aruch, right, as we said, as we said, right, the egg which came out, most of it, right, was laid before Yom Tov. The Chazar v'chakach nolda b'Yom Tov, and then it went back in and came back out on Yom Tov, right? Muter, so that's allowed, as we said, right? It's allowed. So it says, therefore, even if he checked in the chicken coop, right, Erev Yom Tov, before Yom Tov, Samuch lechashicha, right before, darkness, before dusk, right, whatever, right? He didn't find an egg there. But in the morning, right, he goes out there early in the morning, right, and he finds an egg. So he says muter, right? It's allowed, even though, right, you may think, well, it was late on Yom Tov, right? But no, not the case, right? So he says, why? Because chickens don't lay eggs at night. So therefore, right, we assume that it was laid the day before. So therefore, we assume, what do we assume? That it was laid yesterday, right? The majority, and then it went back in again, and it came out, which is allowed. But it says that's only if there's a rooster in the vicinity, right? 60 houses. And also, right, there's no river that interposes there, which has no bridge. If not so, he says, it's possible that he's going to lay the egg on at night, and it's forbidden. But he says, if you didn't check before Yom Tov to see if there's nothing there, or something there, even if they says if there's no males over there, roosters, right? It's allowed anyway. Why? Because we assume that it came from yesterday. Why is that? Because the majority lay their eggs at night, for God's sakes. Right, there you go, right? Okay, good. So it says, therefore, therefore you're allowed to take, here comes the punchline, right? So you can take the eggs, right? Buy the eggs from the goy. In the first night of Yom Tov. Why is that? Because we assume they came before Yom Tov, right? Because most of them come in the daytime. There you go, right? Okay. Same thing on the second night of the 2 days of Yom Tov, right? In the diaspora. But not Rosh Hashanah, right? As we said, right? Rosh Hashanah is one long day. But also not Yom Tov, which comes after Shabbat. That's forbidden. So says the Ramah here, right? So he brings this case, right, that we just saw in the Beit Yosef here, which is that what? You have this goy having a casual conversation, right? So what's going on? As we said, right, that he brings eggs, right, on Yom Tov, first day, and he's casually talking, right, on the cell phone, right? Yeah, they came yesterday, these, they were laid yesterday. So he says, so you're allowed to, you're allowed to rely on that and buy it, right? That's what the Ramah says. Paskin like the Mordechai, right? That we saw in the Beit Yosef. But Davka b'Yom Tov shechal b'emtza Shabbat. So that's only if Yom Tov fell on a weekday. But b'Yom Tov shechal b'Shabbat. But if the Yom Tov came after Shabbat, that's a different story, right? She'az yesh lachush shema noldu b'Shabbat. So then we're concerned they came on Shabbat, assuming the right time. And those are forbidden from the Torah. Oh. So therefore, we have to be stringent, right? We cannot rely on some goy, having a casual conversation on his cell phone. Right? Right? So it says, so therefore, as we said, right, you cannot be lenient in that case. But Dafka b'Yom Tov Rishon, that's only first day of Yom Tov. Aval. B'Yom Tov Sheni, but if it's the second day of Yom Tov, Afilu Rosh Hashanah, even second Rosh Hashanah, Ne'eman is believed. Right? Why? Even Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because that's also from the rabbis. It's only rabbinical, right? So therefore we believe. So there you go, right? So you got the whole package there, right? Okay, now you know what to do with all your eggs. All right, I'm sure you'll be using this this halakha day and night, right? So Bezat Hashem, we'll see you. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. We'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem, and Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
God bless.